Hi, my name is Tom Damp, and I will be narrating this perception checking tutorial. This tutorial is based on the perception checking skill assessment, which was developed by the Skill Assessment Committee in the C&M Communication Studies Department. The purpose of this assessment is to help you learn to create effective perception checks that allow you to clarify the accuracy of your impression of another person's behavior and/or spoken messages. You will do this by sharing your interpretations of the other person's behavior or spoken messages, and also by asking the other person for feedback. As you begin preparing for this assessment, please review the pages from the textbook mentioned in the written instructions of this assessment for more information on perception checks, nonverbal communication, open-ended and closed-ended questions, and perspective taking, as each of these 4 items will be included in this assessment in one form or another. Also, please read the caveat about perception checking examples found in the textbook, because not all of the examples in the textbook will include all of the components of a complete perception check that your instructor will be looking for in this skill assessment. Okay, let's take a look at the instructions here for this assessment. Please note that the written portion of this assessment is to be typed. You'll be typing 2 separate examples. One will be for a personal relationship and the other one will be for a professional relationship. You will use this format for both the personal relationship scenario and the professional relationship scenario. Okay, first you'll begin by describing the situation between you and the other person. Next, you'll state your interpersonal goal, or what your interpersonal goals are, for speaking with this other person. In other words, why have you chosen to use a perception check with this individual? Then you will explain how perception checking can help you achieve your interpersonal goal or interpersonal goals with this individual. The next step in this process is the interaction. Here you will describe the other person's behavior and label it in parentheses. Then in declarative statements, not questions, you will indicate 2 possible non-judgmental interpretations for the other person's behavior and label that as interpretation A and interpretation B in parentheses. One of these interpretations must be your perception of the other person's behavior. The other one must be an interpretation about how you think the other person might see their specific behavior. So you imagine putting yourself in the other person's shoes and thinking why they would have been doing what they were doing. Then you ask an open-ended request for clarification about their behavior and label that in parentheses. This is to be written in first person as though you are speaking directly to that individual. Be sure to check with your instructor for specific details about the demonstration portion of this assessment. Graded components of the demonstration portion of this assessment include tone of voice, eye contact, body orientation, and facial expression. Let's take a look at a written example to help give you a clearer idea of how you can approach the written portion of this assessment. Okay, so first is the background. Underneath background it says personal situation. I asked my roommate a question while he was reading something on his tablet computer and he didn't respond. I don't really know why he didn't respond. Then next is your interpersonal goal. My interpersonal goal for speaking with my roomie about his lack of response was to find out why he didn't respond rather than just jumping to conclusions. The next step is to explain how perception checking can help you in achieving that goal. Explain how. The perception checking skill might help me accomplish my goal because it requires me to share my interpretations with him, but then ask him to explain what happened. The next part in this process is the interaction. Hey, this morning when I asked you about going to the party on Saturday, you didn't look up from your tablet and say anything. Maybe you didn't want to answer me, or maybe you were into reading an article. Why didn't you look up and answer me? Then the roommate responds by saying, I'm sorry, I had my earbuds in. I was listening to music while reading an article online. Please notice that in this perception check, the behavior, interpretation A and B, and request for clarification are each labeled in parentheses. Please be sure to check with your instructor for any individual preferences that he or she may have regarding the written portion of this assessment. For example, I like my students to label who is speaking during the interaction, and I like them to include a response from the person that they're speaking to, similar to what we saw in the previous slide. However, your instructor might have some different requirements or preferences, so please check with them before turning in your written assessment.